Have you ever wondered what would have happened if Yuji had the ability to steal curse techniques? What kind of crazy techniques would he get in this scenario? And most importantly, how strong would he become? So the story would begin pretty similar to the original, with Yuji growing up with his grandpa. However, in this timeline, Yuji would have a curse technique that allows him to steal curse techniques of the people he defeats. Kinda like Yuta's copy technique. The only difference is that Yuji steals and keeps the technique forever, unless he chooses to pass it on to someone or give it back to the owner. Pretty broken, right? Yuji wouldn't really know he has this ability at this time, since even in the main story, he only truly unlocked his cursed energy potential when he ate one of Sukuna's fingers. So the same would happen here. Okay, so far Yuji's ability hasn't really been used yet, but that would all change once he meets Principal Yaga. Now, if you remember in the show, Yuji fought one of Principal Yaga's cursed corpses, and since cursed corpses have the principal's cursed energy fused inside them, when Yuji defeats one of them, something weird would happen. A surge of energy would rush into Yuji's body as all of the principal cursed corpses run to Yuji's side. The principal would try calling the dolls back, but they wouldn't listen. That's when Yaga would realize he doesn't have his technique anymore. This would shock everyone in the room, including Yuji. They would all realize that Yuji's cursed technique is stealing the techniques of people he defeats. Gojo would tell Yuji to give it back, but Yuji would say he doesn't know how to do that. Eventually, Principal Yaga would decide to allow Yuji to keep his technique for now until he learns how to give it back. But he would ask Yuji to give him some of the cursed corpses he now controls, in case he needs protection, and so the higher-ups don't suspect Yuji's ability to steal techniques. Okay, that was pretty crazy, but now Yuji, on top of his ability to steal cursed techniques, would also have puppet manipulation, the ability to create and control cursed dolls. The next day, Gojo, Yuji, and Megumi would visit Nobara like before, and that arc would play out the same. However, a few weeks later, Yuji would face one of his toughest battles so far. Around this time, the trio went on a mission to evacuate the detention center, and it's here that Yuji faced this special grade spirit and was forced to form a pact with Sukuna to survive. Well, in this timeline, the arc would begin the same, with the trio being trapped and forced to split up. Once Yuji and Megumi come face to face with the cursed spirit, Yuji would use some of his cursed dolls to attack it. But would this be enough to defeat this special grade curse? Well, I don't think so, but it would be a good distraction for the two sorcerers to rescue Nobara and escape, calling for backup, and eventually some grade 1 sorcerers would come and execute the special grade. Since he didn't need to switch with Sukuna to survive, Yuji doesn't die. After coming back from the mission, Yuji would eat another one of Sukuna's fingers extracted from the special grade they escaped from. While all this was happening, Sukuna would find Yuji's ability to steal cursed techniques very interesting, just like how he did for Megumi's in the main story. But he would know taking over Yuji's body would be practically impossible because of his role as the perfect vessel. A few days later, Gojo would visit Yuji and tell him that his actions at the detention center has raised the higher-ups' suspicions of what his technique is, and that he would have to learn how to give the principal's technique back quickly, or else the higher-ups might figure it out. Yuji would tell Gojo that he thinks he's gotten better at controlling this power, and that he finally knows how to give the principal's technique back. The two would head down to the principal, and just like that, Yuji would give his power back and thank the principal for letting him borrow it. Gojo would then leave Yuji at school as he heads out. It's important to remember that around this time, in the main story, Jogo attacked Gojo, so it's probably right to say it'll happen again, but this time it would have a completely different outcome. During the fight, Gojo would realize that if he weakens Jogo and brings Yuji there to finish the job, he would be able to steal the curse's technique, which would greatly benefit the sorcerer's side. So as the fight goes on, Gojo would teleport Yuji, bringing him straight to Jogo. After that, he would quickly open his domain expansion, frying the cursed spirit's brain, and instruct Yuji to hit the cursed spirit with a punch to knock him down, which would technically count as Yuji defeating him. Yuji would do as Gojo said, and just like that, the same surge of cursed energy would run through Yuji's body as he has now stolen Jogo's technique. But before he could fully exercise Jogo, Hanami would rush in just like the main story and take him away. Okay, this fight went completely different this time around, and the best part is, Yuji has now stolen an overpowered curse technique, making him super strong. This would also mean Jogo wouldn't be as useful in Shibuya, as he doesn't have a cursed technique anymore and has to rely only on his cursed energy and physical strength. A few months would pass by, and Gojo would decide to send Yuji and Nanami on a mission to a movie theater, where there's been some weird reports recently. During the mission, things would go mostly the same, with Yuji meeting Junpei and becoming good friends. And after doing a little more investigating, Nanami and Yuji would figure out that Mahito is behind all these recent reports. The same events would take place up until Junpei and Yuji begin their fight. Seeing as Yuji is much stronger in this timeline with Jogo's technique, I see no problem in him quickly knocking Junpei out with some of Jogo's disaster fly things and keeping him restrained until they deal with Mahito. This would also mean that Junpei's curse technique, Moondregs, would transfer to Yuji. But before he could give it back to him, Mahito would arrive, and just like the main story, they would begin their fight. I do believe because Mahito didn't turn Junpei into a transfigured human in this timeline, he would be really mad and fight with much more carelessness, which would be a good thing for Yuji. Mahito wouldn't really know about Yuji's ability yet, as Jogo wasn't aware of what happened after Gojo fried his brain with infinity, so he didn't realize that his technique was stolen yet, so he couldn't tell the other disaster curses and Kenjaku. As Mahito and Yuji fight, Yuji would begin overwhelming him after he started using his disaster flames, along with his incredible physical strength. Mahito would be confused and shocked that Yuji has Jogo's curse technique and ask him how this is even possible. Yuji would just chalk it down as genetics and continue beating down the curse. I think with Yuji having disaster flames, probably one of the most destructive curse techniques in the show, he wouldn't have much trouble with Mahito. Seeing that even in the original story, Yuji put up a good fight without even having a technique. With the help of Nanami, they would eventually exorcise Mahito before he could even escape. And just like that, Yuji would have just defeated one of Kenjaku's core pieces in his master plan. Yuji would also now be able to use Idol Transfiguration as well as Jogo's disaster flames. Man, imagine how cool this would be for Yuji to have these two techniques on hand. Also, I forgot to mention that after the battle, Yuji would explain everything to Junpei, and that he should join Jujutsu High, where he could learn to defend himself and start a new life. He would also give his technique back. So yeah, in this timeline, Junpei joins the gang at Jujutsu Tech. During the time that passes, the students would begin preparing for the Goodwill event, with Nobara and the rest of the second years being super excited to learn about Yuji's new powers. They would be very confident in winning the event with Yuji being so strong. From there, the Kyoto Goodwill event would begin mostly the same, with Yuji being tasked to take down Todo. But this time, as these two students fight, Yuji would overpower Todo with his Idol Transfiguration, probably turning his fist into a giant fist and punching him with it, making Todo super happy and calling Yuji his besto friendo. Eventually, the curses would disrupt the event, but this time they'd be extra careful to avoid Yuji, as they had finally figured out that he has the ability to steal techniques. Everything else would play out similarly to the main story, as Gojo would eventually arrive and launch his Hollow Purple, causing Hanami to flee. One thing that still happens in this timeline is Kenjaku stealing the death paintings and some cursed objects from Jujutsu High. But would he still go through with the Shibuya incident, seeing as Mahito is now dead, and he can't really start the culling game without his technique? Well, I think he actually will. Remember, Kenjaku's curse technique enables him to steal anyone's body by implanting his brain inside their heads. And if he does that to Yuji, he would also be able to use all the techniques Yuji stole, including Idol Transfiguration. Anyways, a few days later, Yuji, Nobara, and Megumi would be sent on a mission to investigate the bridge victims. Here, Nobara and Yuji would face off against the two death painting brothers, and just like the main story, they would easily defeat them, adding a third stolen curse technique, the Rot technique, used by Eso to Yuji's arsenal. It's around this time that Yuji would start getting praised as the third strongest sorcerer behind Gojo and Yuta. I mean, he might even be number 2, with all these curse techniques in his full control. This would cause an uproar with the higher-ups, but they can't really do anything about it. Soon enough, the night of the Shibuya incident would arrive, and the barrier would spread over the city. Gojo would be the first one on the scene. He would enter the domain like it's nothing and quickly head to the lower levels of the station. There, he would find a bunch of humans and cursed spirits ready to take him on. He would also find Jogo, Hanami, and Choso there. They would briefly taunt Gojo, saying they know he can never hurt civilians. But Gojo would laugh, calling Jogo a wannabe villain, as he has no curse technique to even fight with. Jogo would be pissed and tell Gojo he will make Yuji give back his technique. In the meantime, the barrier would be lifted, and the rest of the sorcerers would be permitted to enter the station to help Gojo. But even as powerful as Yuji is right now, I don't think he'd make it in time to save Gojo from being sealed. Before that happened, Gojo managed to exorcise Hanami just like the main story. A few moments later, Kenjaku would let the curses know that they have to find Yuji Itadori, as he's essential to complete his plan. Choso would want to find Yuji first to get revenge for his brothers, and Jogo would want to find him to force him to return his technique. And Kenjaku? Well, he has an even bigger plan in mind. But unlike the original story, Kenjaku would end up up finding the boy first, knocking him out by a sneak attack and keeping him tied up. As Kenjaku knows Yuji, with so many different curse techniques, Yuji is too powerful, and it's now time for him to take his body for himself. Yuji would try resisting, but it'd be pointless. Just before Kenjaku implants his brain into Yuji's body, Sukuna would speak through Yuji, telling Kenjaku that he mustn't forget the deal they made during the Heian era, and that he must feed Yuji all of his fingers so that he can take control of Yuji's body for a short while to switch vessels. Kenjaku would agree, and feed Yuji all the remaining fingers he has, bringing the total to 15, and just like that, Sukuna would take over Yuji's body for a few minutes. In that time, Sukuna would rush to Megumi's location, break off his own finger, and feed it to him, reincarnating inside Megumi's body. Sukuna would laugh, saying he's been waiting for this for so long. This would shock Yuji completely, causing him to go on an absolute rampage in a fight against Sukuna to take Megumi's body back. Yuji would know exactly how to do so because of his experience using idol transfiguration. But would Yuji be strong enough to keep up with 15-finger Sukuna? I think he would be strong enough to keep up, but wouldn't be strong enough to fully defeat the King of Curses. But as this crazy fight is going on, the rest of the sorcerers would end up finding Kenjaku, and with the combined force of Todo, Nanami, Yuki, Noritoshi, and all the other sorcerers, I think they would be able to overwhelm Kenjaku before Jogo and Choso can back him up. Remember, some of the sorcerers barely fought in this timeline due to the cursed spirits not having Mahito in their corner, so it's safe to say they would easily take Kenjaku prisoner, steal the prison realm, and free Gojo before backup arrived. After that, they would use the prison realm to seal Kenjaku in it instead. In his last moments, Kenjaku would yell, saying how Yuji was so lucky to be born with such an ability. With Gojo free, Nanami would explain the whole situation to him. Gojo would then head straight towards Sukuna and Yuji's location as the rest of the sorcerers deal with the other cursed spirits. I think they would be more than enough to take down a no-technique Jogo and Choso. Although unfortunate, Choso would die in this timeline. But anyway, once Gojo reaches Yuji, he would be very proud that Yuji held his own against Sukuna, even though he's been beaten up pretty badly. It would now be a 2-on-1 against Sukuna, but unfortunately, it wouldn't last, as Sukuna would summon Mahoraga and merged beast Adito, making it a 3-on-2. The battle would be fierce and cause most of the city to be destroyed, but would Gojo and Yuji be able to actually defeat Sukuna together? Well, I think yes, seeing as Gojo was able to fight and almost win against almost full-powered Sukuna with the 10 shadows in the manga. Plus, with this overpowered version of Yuji with idol transfiguration, disaster flames, and the rot technique, I think they would eventually destroy Mahoraga. Yuji would then split Megumi and Sukuna's souls from the body with idol transfiguration. As Sukuna is in this weakened state, Gojo would end the battle with a final blow, ending the King of Curses for good. Click this next one where I explore what would happen if Sukuna were reborn with his memories and became good. I know you want to. Come on, click it!